Hi guys, welcome to Steve Strings. Today I'm going to be showing you how to build a cigar box guitar using minimal tools. Only things you require to make this are going to be a stick, and this is one you can pick up at the big box store, like a 36-inch long stick. I'm going to be using a cigar box and of course tuners and the screws that go with them, a piezo, and a jack. This will be electric. I'm going to be using some rivets to hold the strings in. I'm going to be using some washers and a reverb spring. And then, let's see, 4 bolts and some screws and a couple of cup hooks in order to put the reverb spring in. The only tools that I'm going to be using to put this together are going to be a drill and various bits, a screwdriver, a pair of pliers, and sandpaper. That's it. The only tools required to build this. So if you're living in an apartment and you think you can't build a cigar box guitar, if you have those things, a drill with some bits, some screwdrivers, and a pair of pliers, you can build a cigar box guitar the way I'm going to show you here today. So let's get started. Alright, so I've got my box and my stick here all prepped to go, and I should say that the main tools I'll be using here are going to be a drill. I've taken some sandpaper and I've sort of secured it or glued it to this pencil. I'll take the rubber bands off once it's kind of stuck, and I'll use that for some filing. But right now I'm going to be drilling some holes. I'll be drilling a hole here for the jack, for the piezoelectric pickup. I'm going to be drilling out the silhouette of this Texas silhouette for the sound hole. I'm also going to be putting in a couple of little holes in the side of the box so that I can put the screws in for the put the hooks in for the reverb spring. And then I'll be putting this this stick here on the box, and I'll be drilling through the stick and through the box, and then of course drilling in holes here to put the ends pieces of the string in, and then drilling holes in up here for the tuners. So let's get started. Okay, so there we have it. Now I just need to finish punching that out, and we'll have it be ready to start sanding. Okay, so I finished punching out that hole. I need to do some trimming of it still. I punched out the hole for the jack, and I drilled a couple holes for the springs, or for the hooks for the reverb springs. The next thing is to drill the holes in the neck that will accommodate this bolt, which will go through to the body, and then do the same thing, drill it out on the body as well. Okay, so now I have the holes drilled in the neck so that these bolts can go into the recess, and so that they won't be sticking up above the fretboard. And I'll be putting washers on here and underneath to secure this. So the next thing is to drill the holes through the box. I'll be using one of these as an orienting pin to make sure the second one's lined up. And you may see I've already sort of sketched on the stick some lines to make sure I put this in the right spot, and I've also put lines in the box. I'm going to be sanding all those off so it won't make any difference once I get going here. So let's put this in the right place, make sure it's oriented. Okay. And that works. So I'll use that bolt as an orienting pin to make sure I'm lined up for the second one. there we go. So that's how that'll be going on. Now you may be thinking that if I bolt this to the top of the box, this won't resonate, and you'd be right. Because what I'm going to be doing is using washers. I'm going to be gluing washers to the underside of this stick so that it's the washers making the contact with the fretboard, and there's going to be a free space here except for this one other washer, which is also going to be super glued on there, and that will be directly underneath of the bridge so that it will resonate better. So that's the plan. So now that I have all the holes I need to have drilled into the box, next I'm going to come up here and drill the holes into the headstock. And I've already sort of pre-marked the little dots of where I want those holes to go. So I'm going to pre-drill with a thin bit, and then go for a larger bit, because this larger bit actually a bit dull, and then I'll go in for a larger bit still so that it'll be recessed so that I can put the washers or the little nuts on the top of that. Alright, so I finished drilling all the holes I need to. Again, just to rehash, I drilled a small hole here and here so that I can screw from the inside the hooks I need to attach the reverb spring. I drilled a hole here for the jack. I drilled holes here and here to go through so that I can bolt this to the box. I drilled 3 holes here for the tuners, and I forgot to drill them, but I'm going to drill 3 holes right here so that I can put the strings through. And then the last thing to do is to go ahead and work on cleaning up the sound hole. Again, the simplest thing to do would have been to just drill a round hole in there. I want something a little more interesting. So I drilled that out, and now I could just take like a file or an emery board, or even you could take a little knife or anything basically sharp and just trim that to get that clean. The next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and sand this to just sand away that paint, and then I'm going to hit it with a coat of a clear coat, and then I'll be able to go ahead and address the neck. To address the neck, basically I'm going to be using just sandpaper to take these sharp edges off, and then going to probably stain it and treat it, and then attach it to the box and string it up. It'll be as simple as that. Okay, so I've taken an emery board and I've kind of cleaned up that Texas sound hole. Next thing I'm going to do is go ahead, I've got some 100 grit here. I'm going to go ahead and sand this this logo off and then spray it. Okay, there we go. So I sanded that off. What I'll probably do while I'm at it is I'll probably go ahead and sand a little bit of a bevel in here just to make it smoother, and probably probably just right there so that it doesn't dig into my arm. That's it. Okay, I've gone ahead and sanded that corner down just to make it a little more comfortable with my arm. And the same thing here, I've just taken that edge off in case I'm kind of leaning on the instrument there when I'm playing. That should make it more comfortable. So I finished sanding the box, it's all prepared. Now I'm going to use just sort of one of these matte enamels to just seal it. I'll let that set for a few minutes and then put probably another coat on it. Okay, so I've got the neck here, and just to review what I've done so far, I've drilled in the holes here for the tuners. I've marked here where the nut is going to be. I've drilled the holes here for the strings to come through, and the holes here for bolting it onto the neck. And again, this is going to be a 25-inch scale, so the bridge is going to be right here. And I just put a little tick mark there, so that what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this pencil here and basically just sort of file in a little groove there in order to put the bolt I'm going to use for the saddle. And I'll do the same thing here to put in the bolt I'm going to use for the nut. So right now what I need to do is basically just get these sharp edges off of the fretboard here, or get the sharp edges off of the neck. So I can just take the sandpaper here like this and basically just go ahead and just hold it in my hand like that to get those sharp edges off there. And if you're in an apartment or something, you don't have a lot of tools, that certainly will get it done. This is 80 grit sandpaper. I think I'd like to get a little more of that off, so I'm going to take the sandpaper here and I'm going to put it on this piece of scrap wood I have. So I'm going to use this as a sanding board. So what I'll do here is turn this over and just rub it like this. Okay, so I've got it sanded down there with a coarse sandpaper. Now I'll get some finer sandpaper, something like this here, and finish sanding it down smooth. Okay, I think that's good. So again, I use this little 80 grit sandpaper. Sticky back that's stuck to a pencil, and I put the grooves in there for the nut and for the saddle. And I've gone ahead and got this neck nice and smooth. Again, I started off with this just sandpaper on a stick, and then I came along with this other finer sandpaper to get it rounded and nice and smooth. And while I'm talking about this, you may be able to see here from looking at this that there is a bit of a back bow to this stick, which I'm not too concerned about because this is going to be a fretless guitar and the strings are going to be pulling this straight anyway, so I'm not too concerned about that at all. So the next thing to do is to go ahead and wipe off all this the dust that's on here, the sanding dust, and then get out the linseed oil. I'm going to go ahead and oil this down, and then I can put the hardware on and put it together. That's it. Alright, so I have my boiled linseed oil here, and this is what I use to just sort of seal the wood, and it's really easy to do. I just take and put some of the linseed oil on a cloth and just wipe it on. In case you're curious what kind of wood this is poplar. I came across this at the big box store. And most poplar I see is pretty pale, but this one had a nice dark hue to it. And unfortunately, like I said, it has a bit of a back bow to it, and so I knew I didn't want to use this for any fretted instrument because of that curve. But I thought with this nice color wood, I could use this for a fretless slide guitar. I also thought about perhaps staining the wood to make it even darker, but I thought, no, I'll just go with the natural look, because the whole point of this particular video is to show that you can make a cigar box instrument using minimal tools, and in this case, not even a saw. If you'd had a saw available, you could have cut this down and not had to worry about having the larger drill bits to get in there. But again, hopefully you'll see that this is pretty easy to do. Okay, and that's looking pretty nice. That has a nice dark color to it. I'm really liking that. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna let this go ahead and soak in for a few minutes, and then I'll come back and probably wipe it off and see what it's looking like. I may give it a second coat. We'll see what it looks like. But that's basically all there is to putting a protective coating on that wood. And I am really liking the looks of that. Okay, so I finished with this stick. What I did was I came out here and I lightly sanded it one last time, put another layer of the linseed oil on it, and then burnished it with some paper, basically some packing paper, just to get that nice and smooth. You can see I've gone ahead and put these two bolts in here already. The next thing to do is to put in these rivets, which will be here to keep the strings from cutting into the stick. So let me get my pliers here, and we'll get those put in. There's one. And these are pretty straightforward to put in. Basically, just make sure you drill the hole big enough, and they just slide in. And that's all there is to that. The next thing I need to do actually is to glue on some washers. Now, what I'm doing here is I'm having two washers. They're going to be going on the neck like so. And then I'm going to be gluing on another washer here, and that's going to be going where the bridge is. And the point of this is so that when these are on the box, the only thing making contact with the real resonating surface of the box is going to be the washer that's attached to the stick. That way the rest of the box is left to be able to reverberate. So again, I need to just double check where the, just double check where the bridge is going to be. All right, and so the bridge is going to be right here. So basically it's going to be going right like that. Okay, so now I just need to get my super glue and glue these onto the stick to get ready for attaching it to the box. Okay, I brought this back inside. It's about 96 degrees out there on a June, Texas day. So I've gone ahead and super glued these washers on here, and hopefully you can see that what this will do is provide space between the stick and the reverberating surface of the box, so that it'll have a better chance to reverberate. If I have the stick touching the whole box, it'll dampen the reverberation and decrease the sound. At least that's the theory behind this. So before I go ahead and attach this to the box, I figure I can go ahead and put the tuners in. And I should say that, again, I don't have a fretboard on this, so I cut I filed or sanded the groove, not filed, I used the sandpaper to kind of just abrase a little groove there for the bolt that will serve as the nut. And I drilled the holes here in the headstock with a couple of different bits, and I also took that little sanding pencil I had and I cut some little, or sanded some little grooves into there so that the strings hopefully won't cut into the wood. So we'll see how that does. You may also see that I drilled a hole in here, and that's so I can put like a leather loop in there so I can hang this up if I want to. So let's go ahead and look at putting the tuners in. Okay, so I honestly didn't plan this through very well. I just realized that the washers that go on here are bigger than the holes that I drilled. So I'm going to have to go back downstairs, get my other Forstner bit out, and drill a bigger hole to accommodate this washer. So let's move on to something else then. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and solder this together. And again, this having a piezo for electrification is not required for an acoustic cigar box guitar. But I'd like to go ahead and have one here just in case I would like to plug it in. So I'm no great solderer, so let's see if I can do this without too much aggravation. Okay, that looks like that may have done it. Okay, and that thing's warm too. It transfers the heat. Let me see if I can plug it into an amp here and see if it's working. And it works. Okay, the next thing to do is to secure it to the box. You may see here that I've already have the spring sitting in there, but I can take that out for now. And I need to install this in the box and then hot glue it in. Again, so just to reorient you to this here, it's going to be going this way. So this is where the tailpiece is, and the jack is going to be going in right there. So that's tightened down. Hopefully that's going to work all right. And again, the bridge is going to be right there. So I want to have this right underneath of the bridge, because that's where the contact is going to be made. So next thing I do is heat up the hot glue gun and hot glue it in. Okay, it's time to go ahead and put the tuners in. And I should say that I made a mistake here, and I did not start with the largest Forstner bit first when I started this process. And so I had to go back and use a larger one. And that means I had to go back and do a little bit of trimming to make sure everything fit. So if you're going to be using Forstner bits, make sure you use the largest bit first before you drill the center hole in. But that said, let's go ahead and get these in the right positions. And let's see here. And these go. And the way these work is you put a washer on, and then these nuts go on top of that. And all right, so these are not fully tight yet. So next thing to do is to go ahead and make sure these things are in the right orientation. And then I'm going to take my drill and drill some holes right in the right spot, and then go ahead and put the screws in to get them secured. Okay, so I've taped this off so I don't go too deep, and I'll pre-drill these holes. Okay, so that's pre-drilled. And I've got the 3 screws here. I'm going to use these little small screwdrivers. I picked these up the whole set for $1 at the dollar store, and they work just fine. Okay, so these screws are now set, so these tuners won't spin. So now I can go ahead and use these to screw them in. All right, so those look set. All right, so now that the tuners are set, the next thing to do is to go ahead and attach this to the box of the cigar box. Okay, so here's the cigar box, and again, I've already put the jack in for the pickup, and again, that's an optional thing. That is not something you need to do. You can build this without doing that. You can see here that I've hot glued the piezo in right underneath of where the bridge is going to be. So to do this, I already put the screws in here, or the bolts rather. Now I just need to take these bolts and set them into the holes that I pre-drilled in the box. Alright, so I just put the stick on the box, put the bolts through the holes that I had pre-cut. The next thing is I want to use washers here to secure this. And I have washers, lock nuts, and then these nuts to make sure this thing is held in tight. Oops, lock washer. Okay, lock washer and a nut. And this way, this should hold it tight, because remember, on the other side of the fretboard, I'm sorry, the other side of the neck here, there is also a washer. So basically, this thing is going to be compressing the soundboard between those two washers. So this thing is going to be locked in tight. You may also note that I did add some reinforcing cubes there to the corner. That is not something that's absolutely required. That's just something that I just happen to do. This box is probably sturdy enough without having that in there, but I just added that just because. So if you don't have access to be able to cut a piece of scrap wood to stuck in there, it's not absolutely required. Okay, so those are hand tight. So my next challenge is to go ahead and to basically hold this with the pliers while I use the screw here to tighten them up. And I'll see if I can show you this. I'm not sure if you can see this in the light. Maybe you can. But I'm trying to get this so that you can see that there is space underneath of the neck. There's space between the neck and the soundboard. So basically, it's only making contact at this washer, and right here underneath of where that saddle is going to go. And of course, that's right on top of the piezo. So acoustically, hopefully this thing will project some decent sound, and certainly electrically, hopefully it will do even better. All right, so let me go ahead and hold these and tighten them up. So all I'm doing is just holding that nut in there as I cinch down this bolt to engage that lock washer and just compress that and make it tight. And I think that should do it. And now we'll try it for the other one here. Okay. So that did that. Okay, and that is secure, but I hear some shaking up here. So what that tells me is that something up here is loose. Oh, I see what it is. There's just some space between the neck of these tuners and the bolts around them, and they're just moving. Once they're under tension, that shouldn't be an issue. But otherwise, this thing is tight. You may have seen that I pre-drilled 2 holes here so that I can screw this, and I also beveled that so I can put screws in. But that's going to be the very last thing that I do. So again, here's one last look here at the inside. Again, I've got the piezo, the jack installed so it'll come out the face. I just have washers, lock nuts, and bolts to secure this neck to the box. So what that means is if I change my mind on this later on, I can just unbolt it and do something else with it. If I want, I could put it on a different box, or if I wanted to decide I want to actually put it on the inside, I could notch out the box and put it on the inside and then have it resonating off the surface. So I have some flexibility here. The only other thing that needs to be done in here is the reverb spring. And I should say that originally I drilled these holes in a different spot, and I realized I wanted to have them farther apart to get better tension on that spring in order to get it to vibrate. You may note that you see how it's kind of stretched out here. I did that because it seemed like it wasn't really getting the reverberation I was looking for. So hopefully that'll get the job done. So right now I'm going to go ahead and plug it in. Again, just to make sure the sound is working on this when I turn it on. So let's try that. Okay, so this isn't working. I need to figure out what's going on here. All right, so I had to go in there and re-solder. Apparently it wasn't working right. I didn't have it in the right spot. But now it's plugged in and it's making noise. So we know it's good to go. The next thing to do is to string it up. And once I have it strung up and it's working, I'll go ahead and screw it down, button it up, and we'll have a 25-inch scale slide cigar box guitar. So let's do that. Well, here it is, all finished. Let's go ahead and zoom in here so you can kind of see what all is going on up close. Again, I've got that Texas sound hole. I've got this big old bolt to serve as the nut. It's a string through the neck, bolt on neck. Let's look here at the insides. All right, got a piezo. And right now I have this strung up with the acoustic set, the low strings, the EAD strings, and right now it's tuned EBE. And again, this is a poplar neck. And there you have it. So again, this was made using a drill, various drill bits, and sandpaper. I also used a screwdriver, or actually two screwdrivers, a little one to put these screws in, and a bigger one to screw these down. So basically a drill, some various bits, two screwdrivers, and a pair of pliers. That's what I put this together with. So let's go ahead and see what it sounds like. So this turned out better than I thought it might actually, because this box is an MDF top. Again, this neck is bolted on, but keep in mind that this neck is only making contact with the body right under the piezo, and right here is bolted on. The lid is free to resonate. Again, as I mentioned, this neck started off with a bit of a back bow. I've got the heavy strings on here and most of that is gone. Again, it's a moot point because this is a slide, so it doesn't matter. I don't have a very sharp break angle there for the strings, and I don't hear as well, but it doesn't seem to be an issue. I thought about maybe needing to put like a string tree or tension bar or something down there, but right now it's working all right. Well, I hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you did, please comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts about this. Keep in mind that you can build these things with very few tools. If I'd had a saw, I'd have had probably a little less aggravation than trying to use the different drill bits. If you don't have all those drill bits, that could be hard. I think maybe next time I'll try to build something, maybe just using a Leatherman, and see how that goes. Again, I'd love to hear your comments on what you think I'd like to build. Until then, thanks for watching.